My mom had banned me from going to my dad's birthday party because I knew too much about her cheating. 3 weeks before, I discovered something that would destroy our perfect family forever. But here's the most disturbing part. I was starting to crave the same addiction to attention that consumed her. If you've ever felt empty without constant validation or recognized that desperate hunger in someone you love, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Sarah and I'm 18 years old, but honestly, I feel like I've been living a lie my entire life. Growing up in suburban America, everyone always told me how lucky I was to have the perfect family. My dad's a successful businessman. My mom's this picture-perfect housewife who bakes cookies and volunteers at church. And me, well, I was always the good girl who never caused any trouble. But here's what nobody saw behind our white picket fence and perfectly manicured lawn. We were all slowly dying inside from this desperate hunger for validation that was eating us alive. I spent my childhood feeling completely invisible, like I was performing in a play where everyone else knew their lines, except me. My parents were so focused on maintaining this perfect image that they forgot to actually see me, to really know who I was beyond my grades and achievements. So naturally, I started looking for that validation somewhere else, and social media became my drug of choice. Every morning I'd wake up and the first thing I'd do was check my phone, counting likes on my photos, reading comments from strangers, feeling this rush when guys would slide into my DMs telling me I was beautiful. But then the high would fade, and I'd feel emptier than before. So I'd post again. Maybe something a little more revealing this time. Anything to get that attention I was craving. I didn't realize it then, but I was following the exact same pattern that was destroying my mother from the inside out. The addiction to external validation is like a poison that gets passed down through generations, especially in families like mine where appearances matter more than authenticity. We live in this social media-obsessed society where your worth is measured by double taps and heart emojis, where teenage girls are competing for male attention like it's a survival skill, and where mothers are just as desperate for validation as their daughters. What I discovered about my mom 3 weeks before my 18th birthday showed me that this toxic need for attention doesn't just disappear when you get married or have kids. It actually gets worse because now you're trapped in a life that doesn't fulfill you, so you start seeking that validation in darker, more dangerous ways. The scariest part wasn't even what my mom was doing. It was recognizing that same insatiable hunger in myself. That same empty feeling when my phone wasn't buzzing with notifications. That same desperate need to be wanted and desired by men. Didn't even know. I was becoming her, and I didn't even realize it was happening until it was almost too late. This is the story of how I discovered that my perfect family was built on a foundation of lies, addiction, and the toxic pursuit of external validation that nearly destroyed all of us. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you feel that same emptiness when your posts don't get enough likes, if you're constantly seeking validation from strangers online, then you need to hear what happened to us, because this addiction is real, it's dangerous, and it's destroying families across America right now. The worst part is that most people don't even realize they're addicted until they've already passed it on to their children, creating this endless cycle of emotional emptiness and desperate attention seeking that defines modern American families. What I'm about to tell you will shock you, but more importantly, it might just save you from making the same mistakes that almost destroyed my family forever. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my world completely shattered, and honestly, it started with something so simple that it makes me sick thinking about it now. My mom had asked me to grab her phone from the kitchen counter to show her a photo I'd posted on Instagram. You know, one of those mother-daughter bonding moments that I was actually craving at the time. But when I picked up her phone, it wasn't locked, and what I saw on her screen made my blood run cold. There were messages, dozens of them, from different men with names I'd never heard before. And the preview texts were things that no married woman should ever be writing to strangers. My hands were literally shaking as I realized that my perfect mother, the woman who lectured me about modesty and appropriate behavior with boys, was living a complete double life right under our roof. But here's the part that really messed me up. As I scrolled through those conversations, I recognized something terrifying in the way she was talking to these men. It was the same desperate energy I felt when I was posting thirst traps on social media. That same hungry need for validation and attention that made me feel alive. For just a few minutes before the emptiness came crashing back, my mom wasn't just cheating on my dad. She was addicted to the rush of new male attention, and she'd been feeding this addiction for over 2 years through dating apps. Instagram, DMs, and Facebook messages with men she'd never even met in person. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing that I was watching my own future play out in those text messages. Every flirty emoji she sent, every selfie she shared with strangers, every late-night conversation with men who promised to make her feel special again. It was like looking into a mirror of what I could become if I didn't stop this cycle right now. As I stood there in our perfect suburban kitchen, surrounded by family photos and motivational quotes about love and faith, I understood that our entire family dynamic had been poisoned by this addiction to external validation. My dad worked 16-hour days trying to prove his worth through success and money. My mom was seeking validation through the attention of random men online, and I was desperately posting revealing photos on social media hoping that male attention would fill the void inside me. We were all starving for the same thing, just feeding our hunger in different ways, and none of us were actually getting what we needed. The discovery hit me like a freight train because it forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that I wasn't just my mother's daughter. I was becoming her clone. Every time I felt that rush from a guy sliding into my DMs, every time I posted a photo specifically to get male attention, every time I felt worthless when my posts didn't get enough likes, I was walking down the exact same path that led my mom to betray everything she claimed to believe in. This wasn't just about my mom's cheating. This was about a family disease that was slowly destroying all of us from the inside out, and I was the only one who could see it happening. The scariest realization was that my mom's emotional affairs weren't really about the men she was talking to. They were about feeding an addiction that would never be satisfied no matter how much attention she received. And I was developing that same addiction at 18 years old. Every morning after Dad left, she'd spend at least 3 hours on her phone, cycling between dating apps, Instagram and Facebook, crafting the perfect responses to keep multiple men interested in her. At the same time, she'd take selfies in different outfits, always angling for the most flattering shots, posting them strategically to get maximum attention from her online boyfriends. After discovering my mom's secret life, I couldn't just pretend everything was normal anymore, so I started paying attention to things I'd been blind to my entire life. You know how they say ignorance is bliss? Well, once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And what I discovered over the next few weeks made me question everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. My dad would leave for work every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, kissing my mom goodbye, like the perfect husband, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd already been texting other men for hours before he even woke up. I started noticing how my mom's entire mood depended on her phone, how she'd light up when notifications came in and crash into this weird depression when her phone was quiet for too long. It was like watching someone addicted to drugs, except her drug was male attention and validation from strangers on the internet. The scary part was recognizing that same behavior in myself. The way I'd refresh Instagram obsessively, the panic I'd feel when my posts didn't get enough likes, the emptiness that would consume me when guys weren't sliding into my DMs, telling me I was beautiful. My mom and I were both addicts. We just had different dealers feeding our need for external validation. I became like a detective in my own home, watching my mom's patterns without her knowing. The woman who used to lecture me about posting inappropriate photos was doing the same thing, just on platforms where my dad would never see. But here's what really messed me up. I realized I was doing the exact same thing she was doing, just from older men who promised to make her feel young and desired again. I was posting thirst traps for teenage boys and college guys who would never see me as anything more than a pretty face to fantasize about. We were both performing for strangers, both desperate for that dopamine hit that comes from being wanted by someone. Anyone who could make us forget how empty we felt inside. The tension in our house became unbearable as my mom started getting paranoid that someone was watching her. She'd quickly close her phone when I walked into a room. She'd take calls in the garage or locked in her bedroom. And she started accusing my dad of being controlling when he'd ask simple questions about her day. Meanwhile, I was spiraling into my own validation addiction, posting more revealing photos, staying up until 3 a.m. responding to DMs from random guys, feeling worthless whenever my phone wasn't buzzing with notifications from men telling me I was attractive. The irony was that my mom and I were both drowning in the same toxic need for attention, but we couldn't save each other because we were too busy feeding our own addictions to notice we were both going under. Everything came to a head on my 18th birthday when my mom found me going through her phone again. Instead of the screaming match I expected, she sat me down and had the most honest conversation we'd ever had in our entire relationship. She told me she knew I'd been watching her, that she could see the judgment in my eyes every time she picked up her phone. But then she said something that shattered me completely. She looked me straight in the face and said, "Sarah, you think you're better than me? But you're doing the exact same thing I'm doing. You're just using Instagram instead of dating apps." She was right, and it destroyed me to admit it. My mom explained that she'd felt invisible in her marriage for years, that my dad was so focused on work and providing for us that he'd stopped seeing her as a woman, stopped making her feel desired or special. The attention from these men online made her feel alive again, made her remember that she was more than just a mom and housewife, that she was still attractive and interesting to someone. But she also admitted that it was never enough, that no matter how many men told her she was beautiful or how many hours she spent getting validation online, the emptiness always came back stronger than before. Then she turned the mirror on me and asked me why I thought I needed constant validation from boys who didn't even know my last name. Why was I posting photos specifically designed to get male attention? Why did I feel worthless when my posts didn't get enough likes? Why was I seeking validation from strangers instead of building real self-worth? The conversation ended with my mom forbidding me from going to my dad's birthday party that weekend, not because she was punishing me, but because she was terrified that I'd expose her secrets during an emotional moment and destroy our family forever. She made me promise to keep her secret, but, more importantly, she begged me not to become her, not to let the addiction to external validation control my life the way it had taken over hers. 2 days before my dad's birthday party, I made a discovery that would haunt me for the rest of my life, and honestly, I wish I could go back and unsee what I found that night. I couldn't sleep because the conversation with my mom kept replaying in my head, so I decided to get some water from the kitchen around midnight when I heard her whispering on the phone in the living room. The way she was talking was different. From her usual flirty conversations with random strangers online, this was deeper, more intimate. Like she was talking to someone she actually cared about, instead of just another source of validation. I crept closer and heard her say something that made my blood freeze in my veins. She was talking about meeting up in person, about finally taking things to the next level with someone she'd been emotionally cheating with for months. But the name she whispered made me want to throw up right there on our hardwood floor. It was Marcus, my dad's business partner and supposed best friend. The man who'd been coming to our family barbecues for years. The guy who helped my dad start his company from nothing. My mom wasn't just addicted to validation from strangers anymore. She was planning to destroy our family by sleeping with the one person who could obliterate my dad's business and personal life in one devastating blow. The next morning, I confronted her with what I'd heard, and instead of denying it or showing any shame, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sarah, you don't understand what it's like to feel invisible for 20 years. Marcus sees me. He makes me feel alive in ways your father hasn't in decades." That's when it hit me like a lightning bolt that my mom's addiction had no boundaries, no limits, no moral compass left to guide her decisions. She was willing to sacrifice everything. Our home, my dad's business, our family's reputation, even my future, just to feed her insatiable need for male attention and validation. But here's the part that absolutely destroyed me. As she was defending her decision to betray my dad with his best friend, I realized I was standing there in a crop top and shorts I'd specifically chosen that morning because they made me look more attractive, hoping that some guy at school would notice me and give me the validation I was craving. Even in that moment of moral crisis, even while judging my mom for her addiction, I was still performing for male attention, still seeking the same validation that was destroying our family. The hypocrisy hit me like a freight train because I understood that I wasn't just watching my mom's addiction spiral out of control, I was living my own version of the same disease. Every revealing photo I posted on Instagram, every time I felt empty without likes and comments, every hour I spent crafting the perfect response to guys in my DMs, I was walking down the exact same path that led my mom to betray everything she once held sacred. That night, I went through my own phone and saw the progression of my posts over the past year, how they'd gotten more and more revealing, more desperate for attention, more focused on getting validation from strangers who didn't care about me. As a person, I saw how my captions had become more suggestive, how I'd started posting at specific times to maximize male engagement, how I'd begun measuring my self-worth entirely by the number of guys who told me I was beautiful. The terrifying truth was that my mom and I were both addicts, chasing the same high. We just had different dealers feeding our need for external validation. She was willing to destroy her marriage for the ultimate validation of having a man choose her over his loyalty to her husband, while I was slowly destroying my self-respect by reducing myself to nothing more than an object for male consumption on social media. The addiction to validation had no bottom. No point where it would be satisfied. It would just keep demanding more and more until we'd sacrificed everything that actually mattered in our lives. Standing in my bedroom that night, looking at my phone full of thirst traps and desperate pleas for male attention, I realized that if I didn't stop this cycle right now, I would end up exactly like my mom, willing to betray anyone and anything just to feel wanted by someone who would never truly love me. The scariest part wasn't even what my mom was planning to do. It was recognizing that same bottomless hunger in myself, that same willingness to compromise my values and dignity just to feel desired by men who saw me as nothing more than entertainment. The morning of my dad's birthday party, I made the hardest decision of my life and decided to tell him everything about Mom's emotional affairs and her plan to meet Marcus in person. I found him in his home office at 5 a.m., already working like he did every single day, and when I started explaining what I'd discovered, I expected him to explode with anger or break down crying. But instead, he just looked at me with the saddest smile I'd ever seen and said, "Sweetheart, I've known about your mother's online relationships for over a year now." My world collapsed all over again because I realized that our perfect family wasn't just built on lies. It was built on everyone knowing the lies and choosing to ignore them rather than face the painful truth about who we really were. My dad explained that he'd been dealing with his own depression for years, throwing himself into work 16 hours a day, not just to provide for us, but because achieving business success was the only way he knew how to feel valuable and worthy as a man. He admitted that he'd emotionally abandoned my mom and me while chasing promotions and bigger paychecks, thinking that being a good provider was the same thing as being a good husband and father. The three of us sat down that morning and had the most honest conversation our family had ever had. And what we discovered was devastating but also liberating, in a way I never expected. Mom was addicted to male attention because she felt invisible and undesired in her marriage. Dad was addicted to work success because he measured his worth as a man by his ability to achieve and provide. And I was addicted to social media validation because I'd learned from both of them that your value comes from external sources rather than internal self-worth. We were all starving for the same thing, love and acceptance, but we'd been trying to get it from everywhere except each other, and in the process we'd created this toxic family dynamic where everyone was performing for strangers, instead of connecting with the start over, to get therapy both individually and as a family, and to stop measuring our worth by likes, paychecks, or attention from people who didn't really know us. It wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight, but for the first time in years we started talking to each other instead of talking to our phones. And we began building real relationships based on honesty, rather than the perfect image we'd been trying to maintain for so long. The hardest thing I ever did was delete Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat from my phone, and I'm not gonna lie. The first week felt like actual withdrawal from a drug that had been controlling my life for years. Every few minutes I'd reach for my phone expecting to check notifications that weren't coming, feeling this panic in my chest when I realized I couldn't see how many people had liked my latest post or who had viewed my stories. But for the first time in my life, I was forced to sit with myself without the constant distraction of seeking validation from strangers. And what I discovered in that silence was both terrifying and liberating. I started going to therapy twice a week, and my therapist helped me understand that I'd been using social media as a drug to avoid dealing with my own feelings of inadequacy and emptiness. Posting, revealing photos, and seeking male attention because I didn't know how to love myself without external proof that I was worthy of love. The withdrawal was brutal because I had to face all the emotions I'd been numbing with likes and comments. All the insecurity and self-doubt that I'd been covering up with carefully curated images and fake confidence. But slowly, something incredible started happening. I began to discover who I actually was when I wasn't performing for an audience of strangers who didn't know my real name or care about my real dreams. I started journaling instead of posting, reading books instead of scrolling through feeds, having real conversations with people instead of collecting superficial interactions from men who only saw me as an object for their entertainment. The transformation wasn't instant and it definitely wasn't easy. But for the first time in years, I started to feel genuinely confident in my own skin without needing constant validation from others to prove my worth. I learned that true confidence comes from knowing your own values and living according to them. From building genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than physical attraction, and from finding purpose in activities that fulfill you internally rather than activities that just generate external approval. Most importantly, I realized that I didn't need hundreds of strangers telling me I was beautiful to know that I had value as a human being, because my worth was never determined by how many people wanted to sleep with me or how many likes my photos could generate. The girl who used to post thirst traps for male attention was gone, replaced by a woman who understood that real beauty comes from authenticity, real confidence comes from self-acceptance, and real love comes from people who see your soul rather than just your body. And you who are watching this right now, how many hours do you spend scrolling, searching for the next dose of validation? How empty do you feel when your posts don't get enough likes? Look, I've learned the hard way that addiction isn't just about drugs or alcohol. It can be the constant need for attention, the compulsive checking of dating apps, or the desperate hunger for validation from strangers online. If you recognize your family in this story, if you feel that empty feeling when your phone isn't buzzing with notifications, stop today. Understand that your worth isn't measured by views, likes, or how many people want you. Start building genuine connections. Seek therapy if necessary. Don't let your addiction to digital validation destroy your real relationships like it almost did mine. Asterisk, asterisk, after all of this, I realized that our family wasn't perfect. We just had a lot of practice pretending. And you know what? It's okay to not be perfect. Asterisk, 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 listen to me. Asterisk, asterisk, if you've ever been through something similar, if you've discovered family secrets that have shaken your foundation, or if you're still carrying that crushing weight of validation addiction, share your story in the comments below. Right now, don't wait. Don't overthink it. This channel exists for this exact reason, to be brutally honest with each other. No one is judging you here, because we all have our inner battles, our hidden shame, our moments of desperation in search of the next dopamine hit. Asterisk, asterisk, are you still fighting this battle? Asterisk, asterisk, you are not alone. Asterisk, asterisk, have you overcome something like this? Be the light for those still drowning in the darkness. I see you. Asterisk, asterisk, that person reading this at 2 a.m., feeling empty after hours of mindless scrolling? That parent hiding their phone addiction from their kids? That spouse pretending everything is fine while yearning for digital validation? Asterisk, asterisk, we are in this together. Your story matters. Your struggle is valid. Your healing can inspire someone else to move forward. So I ask you to leave a comment on this video. Share your wins and failures with us. Feel helped. Keep watching this video that is appearing on your screen.